This is the student perspective, the student panel for day 2 of StepEx21. So we'll go ahead and get started now. The background and the purpose of today really stems from the pandemic. The value of education has been questioned long before COVID, but the pandemic accelerated these concerns. Practically overnight, many college students were displaced, losing their on-campus homes along with their jobs and livelihoods. Other students took jobs risking their health to help support themselves and their families, while some students stayed home to take care of children, siblings, and other family members. Some of the things that happened because of that: enrollment dropped, uncertainty and a stable job market rose, and the challenges and benefits of an online education became a central issue. With 2021 and the vaccine, it brought a lot of hope to a lot of people, but new mandates bring new uncertainty for students. So when it comes to decisions that students will make about school, work, and life as we approach a new semester this fall, what are their expectations, hopes, and fears? So these are some other reasons that the session is important, to give students a voice and to help bridge the gap, to address the student concerns about the value of higher education, and to listen to the needs of students and to reflect on where to improve on campus. So time to meet our student panel. We have, if everyone will give a quick wave when I call your name, we have Shirley Leach, who is Master's of Distance Education and E-Learning at UMGC. Fun fact, she loves wearing colorful hats and matching Converse tennis shoes. We have Mish, who is a computer science major at UMGC. And fun fact about Mish is he is currently training for a marathon in September. We have Amanda Lowe, who is a health services management major at UMGC. UMGC is big representation here today. Fun fact about Amanda, she is a stay-at-home mom with 2 young kids and a college-age kid. We have Lindsay, who is a student at University of Central Florida, and she is currently a hospitality management major, but received her Bachelor of Arts in Visual Arts Management in 2019 from UCF. We have Thomas, who is a double major in psychology and sociology. Fun fact about Thomas, his 4 daughters are the reason that he decided to also major in psychology. And then we have Kevin, who is also from University of Central Florida. So welcome, everyone. Host for this session, Dr. Jacob Bonney, will be managing the chat, so feel free to ask your questions. And I'm Erin, Marketing Manager for Student Success at Stepping Blocks. So this is what we'll cover today. Perspectives from the panel: is college worth the cost anymore? Did higher ed adapt well to 2020? Is online education just as good? And what are these students' priorities right now? So we'll start with the student perspective, block 1. The value of education pre and post pandemic. So as we ask these questions, I'll open it up to the panel. Make sure to turn your mic off when you're ready to talk, and anyone can answer. So question 1, agree or disagree, and explain. My college degree will be worth the same as one earned before the pandemic. Anyone feel free to answer.
Can I share?
Sure.
Yeah, so I would say it's probably worth more now. A lot of jobs are like taken out or canceled during the pandemic, especially like computers and like tech jobs. It's a lot more open now. You can work from home. You can pretty much work from anywhere. So the jobs are a lot. It'll be having that degree experience going out of college and pandemic. It'll actually be a lot better because there's a lot more people looking for employees to fill in the position.
Yeah, I think major definitely is a factor in what you're studying and whether you feel it's worth more or not. Would anyone else like to answer that question?
Yeah, I'd like to. I agree. I think that it's going to be a lot better. In Maryland, Virginia, in the mental health, psychology, sociology field, all the social sciences, there's a big opening for it due to the pandemic, working from home or working in the field. There are a lot of jobs, a lot of internships out there.
Yeah, that's interesting, the internship question, which we'll definitely get to. I'd love to hear your perspective. Does anyone else have an opinion on this question? If not, we can move on to the next. Go ahead, Shirley.
I think my degree is going to be worth more at the than before the pandemic because my major is e-learning and distance education. And all during the pandemic, that was everything, you know, especially for the children in the school system, having to go home and learn from home. So I think that model is going to stay in place for a lot of children, because I've read a couple articles that pretty much said some students are not returning to the classroom and they're opting for more stay-at-home type learning environments. So with my major, I think it's going to be helpful for me to kind of target that audience.
Yeah, that's great insight. Thank you, Shirley. Lindsay, did you have an opinion on this question?
Sure. I do believe that my hospitality management degree will be worth the same as one earned before the pandemic, especially in Florida, since we're such a tourist-centered economy. A lot of job openings, especially with the different theme parks, different hotels. I've noticed a lot of my different classmates have been getting internships even during this pandemic outside of Florida. And they've really loved different UCF Rosen College students working for their different hotel companies, just anything with tourism, especially since people are aching to go out once things become more available. I definitely believe that hospitality is still coming back despite our very rough experience with the pandemic. So
yeah, that's an interesting point. You know, hospitality, I think people are itching to travel, but, you know, maybe hospitality will look a little different, but it's still going to be, you know, a huge driving force.
definitely.
All right, let's
Can I
go
ask
ahead.
a question?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm just asking, so I'm still in college. I got a long way to go, but do you think it would be better to have like a learning place like before the pandemic versus now? Because I'm still in school, and I still have to go through that because it might, I guess, kind of like expecting the pandemic to come, like so having that degree and then the pandemic comes and you're like, oh, I'm already ready, versus now you're still in school and you still have to go through all that before having that experience.
So your question is, do you feel it's better to have already earned your degree before the pandemic versus coming out of the pandemic with?
I guess well, still with the pandemic, like kind of having it already like into the pandemic, because it's already been about a year and a half. Like versus like now you already got your degree like last summer. Like it was already pandemic, but it was like early in the pandemic. So you still had, you pretty much didn't have to wait that much.
Yeah, I think timing definitely is a driving factor here. Does anyone on the panel have an opinion of that? You know, I guess you could answer in terms of where you are in your educational career and maybe where you were last year as compared to now. And if you feel that there was a difference, or maybe you have experience just on campus with other students. Is anyone able to answer that question?
As far as being an online student, I already had 2 degrees, but when this pandemic hit, it allowed me to work from home, work remotely, and I was able to go to 3 different schools at one time. I never really wasn't on the campus, so I can't speak on what the campus life was, but as far as my degree goes, I was able to work more and study at home, so I didn't miss any sleep, nor did I miss my family. And what it did was it gave me the experience of working. So now that it's time to like graduate and go out there, I already have pretty much everything as far as prerequisites and hours in and social skills, which I think people are missing the most from that campus life.
Yeah, I think part 2 of that question would be, you know, I guess what type of student? If you're a traditional student versus a non-traditional, do you have a family life that you have to take care of? Are you already working full time, or is all your time dedicated to your education? I think all of those things probably play a huge role in the value you see in, you know, earning your degree before, during, or after the pandemic. Does anyone else have anything to add to that?
So I think, so from my perspective, you know, being an online student at UMGC and returning to school after many years of being, you know, out, you know, in the workforce, and then I have taken this time off to be at home and raise my children, It will be very interesting to see how my degree pans out. I also have the perspective of my stepson, who had to take a year at home from being at an on-campus school. And I actually relate this more to his experience, and I wonder how employers are going to view the online education that he received from a school that was a brick and mortar that he was supposed to be at. And there were definite struggles and frustrations throughout that time. Teachers not showing up for classes. He ended up having to drop classes. And that year of education that wasn't online, I could see the difference between my online experience versus his online experience. It was actually very interesting. It'll be interesting to see how employers look at that. It's almost like a gap year.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'm also wondering, so you and your college age kid, y'all were in the house at the same time, both earning an online education because of COVID. What else did you notice? Maybe were there any differences in the education that you were receiving because you were different types of learners? Was it drastically the same? So what kind of observations do you have about that?
I would actually say it was drastically different. UMGC is built on an online foundation, so they know how to educate their students online. You have to be prepared for it. You have to be organized. You have to set aside the time, and they give you those tools. Whereas from his perspective, he came home, thrust home in the middle of a semester, and the teachers had to learn how to go online. They had never taught classes online. And he definitely had a lot of frustration in sorting out his schedule, setting aside the time to work, at home. In this environment. And in the midst of this, keep in mind, obviously, my younger kids were home, and they were home doing school as well. And I chose to go back to school in the middle of the pandemic, but it was a very, very different experience for him than it was for me, because the online education portion just made a huge difference.
Yeah, I think you're right. Having the infrastructure already in place for being an online school made that transition that everyone was forced to do overnight, made that transition probably a lot easier for some institutions. What about University of Central Florida? For those of you who go there, did you notice anything different in the education that you were getting? We're kind of jumping off topic from what we see on the screen right now, but anything different in the education you received online versus the education you might have received on campus?
Well,
Go
ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, are you sure? That's okay. Well, for me, I started my degree in the fall 2020. So after they kind of worked out more of the, difficulties that they might have experienced during the spring, I know that we do have a pretty solid online education component for our university. So I believe that maybe professors who have taught several courses online had a better footing than others who might have just done it in person. So I can't exactly speak for that experience, but I know that at least the other courses that I knew were going to be online, they were structured still very well.
Kevin, was that you who wanted to add to that same question?
Yeah, I had a very similar experience. It was I ended up taking one class in person on accident during the midst of last year and the pandemic, and I took the rest online. I think UCF did a wonderful job of moving everything online. I still feel like I got everything I wanted. I was able to contact the professors. They're all pretty great. It's just a tough situation. I feel like they did a really good job. I go to Rosen too. I'm a hospitality major, so being in Orlando and working in a hotel during this whole thing was crazy. But I think for what happened and how it happened, I think they did a great job with it. They made everything available online, and it was just I don't really have that many complaints for what happened and how they handled it.
Yeah, for those in the audience that work for those institutions, I'm sure that's such a positive thing to hear from the student perspective. So we'll start, we'll just keep working through the questions. So how concerned are you of the impact on your employment prospects? And this could relate to what Amanda was saying about employers not viewing an online education as valuable as the traditional education. So does anyone have an opinion on this?
I can go. I'm not very concerned about the pandemic's impact on my personal employment prospects. I'm an English major. Most of the field is based in communication, and a very large way that writers get an income is through freelancing. And before the pandemic, they had a system already set up for freelance work and for having ways to get contracts for work through different publishing companies or newspapers or magazines. So in my field, I don't think that the pandemic had a negative impact on my career field. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good insight. And it sounds like it has a lot to do with remote work was not a new thing for freelancers. I mean, you can write an article, you can work for scripted, you can work for a third-party service or, for a publisher from anywhere, and that was already in place. So you feel that was helpful for your field?
Yeah. And I think that the pandemic was a good start for me because it helped me jump into that sooner than I would have without the pandemic. So there's also that, because I was able to get more experience working. I had more time to work on my own personal projects and connect more with people, and connect with different majors and things like that, because they were virtual. And I don't think I would have gotten that if I was in an in-person setting.
That's interesting. And that falls in line to what Thomas was saying as well. He felt he had more time to do other things when you're learning online. Great answers. Anyone else like to contribute to this question? We have plenty of others, plenty of other questions if we need to move on. All right. So internships were brought up. So I'm curious, how do you feel that internships were impacted at your school, whether through a personal experience or maybe one of your peers and your classmates or one of your friends? So what is your perspective on this?
Back to UMGC, like you said, it's already set up for online schooling. So they provided a bunch of resources I had no idea about, as far as the internship, scholarship programs, networking, mentoring groups. I never heard of Step and Blocks until UMGC, even though I've been in school for years. So, like I said, I like it. I think it works. I think the pandemic caused more companies as well as more service agencies and the government to provide opportunities for students and new hires to gain experience, either remotely or coming in.
I have I guess not really negative experience, but with the internship, I tried to, I've applied for a few that are I guess networking kind of, or over at home kind of job. I forgot what the word is, but basically a lot of it probably goes into what experience do you have before, or what, we're not gonna hire you. When you have this major, you're pretty much starting off, because I guess it's like a trust thing. So it helps, with the pandemic, which you can work from anywhere. With internship, they're still kind of better, I guess, person for an internship, but it's kind of harder to find out. But
So you mentioned the word trust. Do you feel that has something to do with being in person and getting to know someone in that sort of setting and an office setting versus remotely?
Yeah, so like I guess because they're pretty much they'll be paying these. So it's kind of like they have to see, oh, is this person reliable? Is this person responsible? Is he going to do his work? Because like, oh, you may be doing online school, and that's great. Be responsible with the computer, but it could be different with the work setting, and that's, I guess the first impression should be in person versus over the phone or on the computer, which that's where it goes into.
Yeah, it's really hard. There's some things that you just can't replicate virtually that you can in person, I think. Even a lot of established professionals and companies are struggling with that this past year. So I can imagine students trying to get your internships or your first jobs and it being remote, that being a difficult obstacle to overcome. Okay, so let's keep moving through. So block 2, and Dr. Bonnie, let me know where we are on time. So when you think it's a good time to pause and open it up for audience Q&A, just let me know.
Yep, we're probably another 3 minutes or so.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so institutional response to the pandemic. Anyone can answer this. So what does your personal college campus experience look like this fall? Is it online? Is it in person? Does it look the same as 2020? Does it look the opposite of 2020? Anyone who would like to share?
I was an online student throughout the pandemic, so my experience was pretty much the same. The only thing that I wish there was more of that I kind of was thrown into is like knowing how to maneuver through Zoom and the different communication applications that suddenly came into play. I was really in the dark with that, so I wish there was a little bit more information on how to be successful with that. But otherwise, my experience was the same.
Yeah, I would agree with Shirley. I mean, UMGC is an online campus. Mine will be online, albeit I truly think I will have actually more time in my schedule when my kids actually return physically to school. That will allow me to spend more time focusing on my classes and not having to focus because they're in the other room or they're right next to me doing their classes. So we had that kind of juxtaposition going on where I was doing my class and my kids were doing their classes. So that's something that will be different for me. And on the other hand, my college age kid is going back on campus.
So you have the house to yourself again.
My husband is still working from home.
All right, anyone else?
Well, I know for UCF, we are planning to be going back in person for a good majority of our classes. They are still offering, of course, our online component as well. I know that they're really pushing for people to be vaccinated, and they're just following the regular Florida guidelines of masks being optional if you would like to wear them inside. So I know that definitely as Amanda's son, probably similarly, it's going back into the brick and mortar physical campus. So that's really exciting to see.
Okay, let's do one more question and then we'll open it up to the audience. So how has your institution's Career Services Center adapted to meet new needs that arose during the pandemic, for better or for worse? Do you use your career services resources?
I use it a lot. They set up on our web courses, on our Canvas, they set up a whole page where you can contact them on Zoom. They have the pop-up Zoom sessions where you have career servicing every Wednesday. They made it very accessible to go. They completely turned it all online. I feel like that's even more better because now I can reach them online from home. I don't have to schedule an appointment and come all the way out there. I can just do it from my house, and I find that to be very convenient. So they've popped up new ways to really be more accessible right from home, and I think that's awesome.
From the UMGC perspective, the career services tools are amazing, and they actually build them into the courses. So if you're taking
Yes.
a course, there's usually a part of that course that focuses on stepping blocks or focuses on VMOC or whatever the other tools are that are available. Thomas knows. Like, I started looking and going, oh my gosh, there's just a wealth of information for career services that I'd never, knew even, existed.
Yeah, I think that's a key, integrating it into, where students already spend time, especially if you're working or you have a family or life. So having to do anything extra makes it hard. So any career services team, at least from what we've seen and heard, it helps to have it integrated into orientations and classrooms and that sort of thing. So we might be out of time for this portion of the questioning. We actually didn't get to a lot of them, which is awesome. Dr. Bonnie, do you want to, if there's anything that was asked in the chat, or we can go ahead and open it up to the Q&A.
Yeah, definitely. I don't currently see any questions in the chat, so we can, as you said, see if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, anyone in the audience, feel free to raise your hand and we can bring you up and you can ask questions directly to the panel, or again, ask in the chat and then we can present that question to the panel as well. Or while we're waiting, if any panelists have any last minute thoughts or takeaways or advice to university career centers and student success staff, anything you want to share as we close this out.
I do have one question here from the audience. What would your preference be once you go back to the workforce? Are you looking to work from home, work in the office, or a hybrid?
Hybrid. Definitely hybrid.
I would prefer working from home, but then I think I would say hybrid, because I think in any situation you still need to have that human interaction in some instances, so I would prefer a hybrid.
I prefer in office just because I like having a work environment, and I don't necessarily like working at home. And I think if I did a remote position again, I would have to buy an office space for myself.
Yeah, I would prefer the hybrid model. For me, that's based on the fact that I'm a parent and I still have to shuttle my kids around and do things, and it would probably make it a little bit easier on my schedule.
I've been pretty much online school for so long. I would say in person because I'm just tired of being here. But I guess hybrid would probably be better after a while, just because it kind of gives you a taste of both. I was thinking, is there, I guess in a different scenario, is there a job that would be better in online versus in person? You absolutely shouldn't work in person for this job, or you shouldn't work online for this job, I guess.
That is an interesting question. Does anyone have an answer for that? Dr. Bonnie, do you have any perspective on what that might be? Is there any jobs that you've come across that are actually more optimal being remote or online versus in person? I think it depends on
The field.
The function and the field. Yeah, and I think there's some things that just can't happen online. And I'm speaking from personal experience, but when it comes to any sort of collaboration, so I guess any sort of role or any sort of task that involves collaborating, yes, it can be done online, but I just find that in person, so much more can be accomplished because, again, nothing replicates that face-to-face. So that's just the way that maybe I work best. The whiteboarding sort of thing. Again, there's so many tools out there now that you can do a mock version of it, but to me, it just doesn't have the same effect.
Yeah.
Well, and Mish, this answer goes to you because I know you're in computer science. My husband works for Oracle and in the hospitality technology group, and he's been working from home. He did say it has impacted their ability to whiteboard in an office, to draw out a solution, to have the engineers there and to get that flow. It is a big difference versus doing it online now. And there are certain parts of his company where their Some of their employees that were in big system test labs had to work from home, and that is almost a stretch. It's very difficult to manage a remote connection and to have multiple pieces of hardware and software set up and run that from a home environment versus being in a physical office and just being on a network within the building. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that now that you're explaining it, I was just not.
Okay, well, we are just 1 minute over our session time, so we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending and for participating. We'll have this recording and we'll share it along with the other recordings from the week, in a few days. So again, thank you so much to all the panelists and everyone for attending.
Thank you, Erin.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.